Hi, I am Vaidas, and you are listening to Humane Engineering, Episode 4, 4-Day Workweek. With Hari Carreras, we are talking about what it takes to have a 3-day weekend every weekend. Hari is a CTO at Abtion, a digital agency that 6 years ago went to a 4-day workweek model and is reaping the rewards: happier employees and a more profitable business. Hari shares some of the reasons for change and practices that enable Abtion to deliver more with less. Ultimately, this is the conversation about effective engineering teams. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did.
Hi, Hari.
Hi, Vidas. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Pretty good. Just coming from doing all sorts of projects that I've been through today.
Yes. Thank you for joining Humane Engineering Podcast. Welcome.
Thanks for inviting.
And yeah, and then we have an exciting topic, right, to talk today. But maybe to begin, it would be nice if you could just talk us through what Absent does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. So, of course, I work at Abtion, and we are a digital agency, which means that we make software for other companies. So we are specialized in building the software basically and making sure that what we do is of course the right thing, right? But we're also very focused on the way we work and the way we collaborate with our clients because we think it's key of our success. It's having that experience very close in collaboration. So we have a lot of touch points while we build the software. So we're a little bit different in our approach, although I know that all agencies claim to have their own unique approach. But we are pretty happy, I would say, with the way we're working and all the steps that we took to get there.
Nice. So maybe you can talk us through briefly like what type of projects you usually do. I
Yeah.
know you just finished one big project, as we discussed this conversation, and then maybe also touch upon about on the tech stack, like what you guys are working with.
Yeah, of course. So we do web and mobile apps. Um, and it's our clients are we are not on a specific industry. We work across all the industries, but they are mostly medium and larger size companies. We don't work so much with corporates, neither with startups. There might be a scale up in our like with the clients we work with, but mostly they have already a team also on their side that we collaborate with. And that's a little bit of the sweet spot for us because of this collaboration that we're talking about. And in terms of technologies, we actually have quite a few. Unfortunately, too many. I'm the CTO, so of course I want to keep it as
Yeah.
reduced as possible. The goal and the vision is to focus more on TypeScript. So that's where we are putting most of our efforts. So both the backend in TypeScript and then the front end with React and React Native. So all our mobile apps are actually React Native. But we also have many other technologies. So we've started doing a lot of Ruby on Rails. We have some PHP, especially with WordPress, and we also have .NET. And those are the main technologies. Then there's always like a few others that I'm trying to keep to a minimum.
Yeah. I guess working with different clients, it's also probably not entirely in your kind of yeah, in your will to just keep it on a specific small list of those.
Yeah, it's always a fight, right? Because of course you want to be as open as possible to accommodate the needs of our clients, but the reality is that we can be most effective if we actually have a specialty. The more specialized we can become, so it's always that balance. And I believe actually with TypeScript, especially looking at the current status and what's going on, it's a pretty good sweet spot because you can do absolutely everything and still have a technology that is more similar to jump between back and forth. Also, our way of working, it's very much with having a very wide range of responsibilities. So all our developers are actually full stack. And in that case, in that sense, also TypeScript is a
Yeah.
beautiful technology for us because you can really do everything without switching so much context.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, especially if you go like if you want to develop full stack straight away. Yes, and then nice. So you work with clients, and like maybe it's just too simplistic of a way of looking at it, but in a way you are also kind of selling time, right? So agencies
Totally.
usually, right? But then you work 4 days a week, and then it means you have less time, right, in a week.
Yeah.
So maybe also starting a bit earlier. So how did you get to the point where you decided that 4 day is work week is the way to go?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and yes, it's the one that we get the most, right? Even before people know that we work 4 days a week. I remember having this conversation with an investor where he didn't know, right? And then he was saying like the topic of 4 day work week just came up, and he was saying something like, well, yeah, it might be possible, but definitely not if you're selling hours, right? And I'm like, yeah, it is possible, but yeah, for sure, you are having a handicap there of like you have 20% less time to
Yeah,
invoice, and all companies that sell hours, we are all in that same business.
yeah,
But maybe coming first to your question of how we got here. So I'm now a partner at Abtion, but when we switched to 4 day work week, I wasn't. So back then, I was an engineering man, or actually it was a team tech lead. I think it was my official title. And we were working on this big project, where basically it was like the one of the largest projects we've done at Abtion. And it was it was a big project for a small company, you could say. And so it was a big thing for us, and we've really put, like classic example where
yeah.
we've really put a ton of effort into it. Maybe a bit too much, right? So the story goes that we had lots of difficulties delivering and making it on time, and it was a very stressful period to many of us. And it was also stressful to management and like those that own the company back then, right? It's privately owned, so it's right now we are 4 partners, and back then they were 3. And it was a tipping point where we decided, or especially it came from management, they decided to do a switch entirely on both the way we were working and like what were the frames, right? Like
Yeah.
giving how much time. So it was actually because of stress and because of we cannot make it, we cannot continue working this way. There must be a different way. And
Yeah.
then everything started from there. It started from that peak, and then it evolved into where we are at now.
Okay, nice. So interesting. I would thought that maybe like engineering, right? Like the people who code would maybe push for maybe something different, but you're saying that it came from management. On the other hand, I guess if you are a manager and you cannot really deliver the project yourself, it's also very stressful, right? You have no no way of helping out or making it fast.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, and there was a combination of things there, right? Because one thing was the frames of we work less time. The other thing is we have to work completely different on how we're working now. And that part came more also from engineering.
Yeah.
How is it that we organize? How is it that we collaborate with each other and are productive?
Okay.
So they both happen at the same time in
Yeah.
our case, adoption, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, it does. So, but okay, so they happen at the same time, right? One way is just working just less time, right? But
Mhm.
then in order to work less time, I guess you also need to work very differently.
Yeah.
So what does that look like now? And for how many years you're already working 4 days a week?
So it's been 6 years now. Yeah. So that's a really good point, right? And it happened at the same time, but not necessarily. So the the 4-day work week wasn't really what changed mostly the way we work. But it was an engine, it was a tool. So the way I see it now and looking back,
Yeah.
it was the excuse actually to start to trigger all of those changes that were necessary, that were needed.
Yeah.
So back then we actually didn't collaborate so much. We had a very classic split of responsibilities where the way I see it now, it's very much like it comes from factories, right? Like someone does one piece, pass it on to the next person who does another piece, and so on and so forth. And then you hope that at the end there is a car or whatever there is, right? And we changed completely that approach, where we are looking a lot more into, everyone needs to look a lot more into what's going to be the final product. And yes, of course, I do have a speciality, but that has to be part of the final product. So we call it collective ownership. And if we look at that point, right, there were so many changes that were needed. And the great question is like, why would anyone want to change, right? Is it so that, like, I don't know, the founders can buy like a more expensive car, or what is it for, right? So in this case, it really was a fuel to everyone at Abtion for saying, if we want this to be a reality, it's not only that we are gonna work like differently, is that we need to finish in 30 hours, and we need to produce at least the same that we used to produce, right?
Yeah.
So it became the storyline that we shared with each other, and a bit of the reason why we are working the way we do. Um, and I thought it was like both back then and also now, I think it was very significant, and we have achieved those changes thanks to that, right? So they came, you could say, separately on one side, but they happened thanks to each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Uh, as you know, we at Command also work 4 days a week, right? And
It's
then,
very interesting because it's so different.
yes, it is and it isn't actually. And maybe also we can touch upon that. But it also was when I was joining, I thought about, um, I thought that it's great challenge, first of all, right? Just to be as effective in 4 days as you ordinarily are in 5.
Mm-hmm.
But it also, I think, what I also thought that every team wants to be effective, right? Like every engineering team. I don't know a team that didn't want that. But at the same time, like you're working like everyone else. You're working 5 days, right? You have the same 40 hours, etc. And there is no real push to actually change or consider drastic changes to achieve that effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have 4 days, like you have no excuse, like you have nowhere, like you need to think quite big
Yes.
in order to actually be competitive. One way of looking at it, right? But like just achieving the same, at least the same things with the benefits of 3 days weekends.
I totally agree with that, and that is still that is still the case, right? Every time we need to take a decision, you need to take it into the frame of, okay, but we work 4 days a week. Can we really afford to do this, right?
Yeah.
And that is the conversation. Like, you need the machine to be well oiled somehow, right? Like, if
Yeah.
anything that you do, you have to keep in mind, but we need to be performant. We need to deliver 4 days a week. And also personally, to me, is a reminder, because I am a person actually that naturally I will be pushing the limits of my own work. So I am the first one to blame. Like, I'm the first one to say, hey, you have to stop working, because
Yeah.
it's part of what I believe in, right? But I would be one of those that, and I was back then, right, when we were working 5 days a week. It was much more than the official 37 hours that we work in Denmark. So it's also good for me to say a reminder, no, you cannot work Friday. The same way that most people would say, no, I cannot work Saturday or Sunday, right? you just have that in mind. So don't whatever I have in my mind where I can just, especially as a manager, right? It's like, well, I
Yeah.
can catch up on Friday. It's so easy to say that actually as a manager, but I
Yeah.
shouldn't, right? I shouldn't,
Yeah.
because otherwise everyone is gonna be also running a little bit faster and becoming
Yeah.
a bit more stressed, right?
Yeah, and I think that's also an interesting point to touch upon, manager versus individual contributor. But maybe just first talking about first through like engineers week, for example. So how does that look now in Abtion? Like how does engineer this week look?
Well, so I would say if you look at the week itself, we have similar rituals that most Scrum teams have. We are based on extreme programming. So the values are a little bit different. So basically in extreme programming, for those that are not familiar with it, you take everything from Agile and you ask the question, what if we take this to the limit? So one of the things, it's short feedback loops, right? And that's a very interesting one because extreme programming asks the question, what if we take this to the limit? And that would be two people or several people working together at the same time, or maybe having automatic testing, depending on whatever you're doing on, the feedback loop needs to be immediate.
Yeah.
So taking like these values into account, we've built our work week. So on Mondays, or sorry, every day of the week, we have a stand-up. But taking this value into account of, okay, we want rapid feedback, then what you're going to see is that people do what we call a show and tell. So in the stand-up, every developer would start by sharing their screen and saying, I've been working on this, and asking questions to the stakeholders, the clients that are part of the stand-up. And then we have like conversations together about how things should be and what decisions we need to take. And the goal is to take as many decisions as possible also during that half an hour. It's actually, of course, you also need to collaborate on what are you going to be working on. But that takes up way less time than it is on taking decisions. It's also for us as a agency, because we are external, right, to our clients. It is a way to say, hey, keep half an hour for us and we'll make sure that things are running. With many of our clients, we also have many conversations during the day. So for example, I've just been working with a developer who we were talking about a problem. He had an idea about, hey, I don't really like the loading screen. It looks broken. The designer is on vacation. We said, like, we started bouncing ideas, and then we said, should we call the client? Should we call the stakeholder, see if she has 5 minutes? And then we came up with an idea, which is basically putting some text where we are a little bit funny saying what's going on, right? In funny terms. And then we took the decision, we called the client, and then she said, like, great idea, go for it, right? And this is a little bit of an example of how the day looks, but it's also a little bit different of how other people look. Developers are very much looking at the end product and talking to people, collaborating between other developers, with the client, with the designer, with the product manager, with whoever. And besides that, we have like a normal week in the sense that we have retrospectives, usually bi-weekly because of the 4-day work week. And we have planning sessions usually once a week. And we also try to keep focus time. That is something important, right?
Yeah.
But just to finish this long monologue, I would say like the key point for me here is that in more intense collaboration, including a lot of pair programming that we do, and even with the client. So sometimes you will be coding where the client is next to you. If you have to do many small changes, for example, something like text changes, that would be a classic, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then I think, like having the client or having, anyone, I guess, for us, it would be maybe a product manager or maybe also like client of ours that like if it's a big client experiencing challenges, right? Having right there to answer questions and being in the loop, like that's the gold standard probably, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think, like, for example, you work in a product company, right? So in your case, I assume it will be a little bit differently in the sense that you can arrange more stakeholders, maybe more people with opinion. You have more freedom on that we do, right? Whereas we also sometimes need to do a compromise because sometimes we believe we are the center of the universe, right? But we're not. We're just a part of their business. So we need
Yeah.
to respect that. So I'm actually also curious on how if you want to share a little bit of how that is different for you since you are a product company.
So what we recently did, not so recently already, actually, it's end of 2025, so it's already maybe a year or so. What we changed was also kind of turned it around and then said that engineers are responsible for the solutions that we want to build, right? So we said, okay, our product people is the business side of the at least that organization, right, of the organization, and then you bring us challenges that we want to solve, challenges that our clients facing, challenges that we are facing internally, like with the processes, etc. But then it's an engineer who talks with the product people, or maybe even if with a client, and then devises a solution,
Nice.
and then talks over again. So they would say, okay, I think this should work, and probably it may not address the challenge directly sometimes, because maybe like if what you want is just would take us, I don't know, 3 months of development, and we just cannot, like, we cannot invest that much time. But then we would find ways to address the pain point, like maybe 80% with 20% effort, right?
Yeah.
And then engineer who does that, we work in pairs actually. That's
Yep.
also one of the change after the workshops we had. Like, so two engineers collaborate on that solution. One usually leads, and then when they are happy, like the whole team agrees, because we have a small team, so the whole team kind of agrees, has a buy-in into the solution, and then the same people who devise the solution goes and implements the solution as well.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest changes that we made, because previously we had this, I think, the usual, so to speak, way of working, where there is a session where one engineer prepares tasks, then they kind of evaluate them, right? Grooming session, and then those tasks go to the to-do list, to the backlog, and then anyone can take any task.
Yeah.
And then no one has the overall ownership or overview over that project. And then it just, especially when you need feedback, when you need to make a decision, it just stalls
Yeah.
sometimes. So changing to a couple of engineers taking ownership of a project, devising the solution, going and agreeing like with the stakeholders, and then going and implementing, I think worked very well for us.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Sounds that we are now in a much more similar workflow, definitely. And something that I also want to say is because we are an agency and we have to work on a big project. I'm going to say, like, it depends also a lot on the type of challenges that we're working on, right? So when we are talking about envisioning, like if we're talking about vision of an app, then for me, it's also important to say that we fall into the problem also of giving responsibility too early to an engineer, where it's like there is still, of course, the space, and it's very important to have someone like looking ahead for the whole vision. So we do have product managers, we have UX designers, have UI designers, right? So those
Yeah.
roles still exist. And I say because we fall into, they need an app, let's just give it to an engineer, right? And then they don't take the decisions that end up in the best product, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's also my view, that product managers should focus on like what should we solve, and then once you have a solution, just validate, okay, that actually solves the challenge, right? The clients have that we observe, etc. Because we had some cases where like it just product managers, if you ask them data description of task, they would just write like 2 pages of what needs to happen where, and we were in that space. And then that just engineers are such great people who just, if you give them a description, they will find a way to actually accomplish all those things, even if it takes them 2 weeks to do a small thing. And then, so my approach was, okay, can we step back? Can we think, okay, we have a challenge, and then let's find like the path of least resistance
Yeah.
to solving that challenge. And I
Yeah.
think then the synergy works wonders.
It's such a good point, because if I think one of the big mistakes I see product managers and stakeholders asking developers is it possible to?
Yeah.
And that's a challenge to the engineer. It's
Yeah, it
you're
is.
triggering them.
Yeah, and it's just possible then. They will find a way, right?
They'll find the way, right? And it's like, no, that's not. It's like, we have these frames, right? It's so important to set the frames.
Yeah.
What are the resources that we have? Well, we have a day. Okay, then it's not possible to do that, right?
Yeah. So we're talking about engineers, but then how does 4-day work week work for a manager? Because
Yeah.
I found it very challenging to adapt actually to 4 days a week.
Yeah, totally. I would say, yeah, maybe one feels, for me personally, like the biggest difference is that when you are a manager, and I think many people that have followed the same path that we
Yeah.
have, coming from technical to managers, is that you stop having that dopamine, right? That I've completed this task, I've done something today that I can see and it's tangible. And then I would say, like, the easy thing, because I've been working for the work week, I started as an engineer. So I had my excuse made up in my mind, if that makes sense. When you are a manager, your work changes completely, and you are a lot less into this dopamine cycle. And I context switch a lot more. That's also something we protect
Yeah.
really a lot to engineers. They have to context switch as little as possible, although it's a challenge, of course, in an agency of hours. But as a manager, it's like, it's part of the job. Like, you will
Yeah.
have to context switch more often. So there is a lot of things to have in mind and to have into account. So for me, actually, it would be like, I could excuse myself and do something on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday that would make things to run faster on Monday, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So to
Yeah.
me personally, that's the biggest challenge, is to narrow those hours. I'm not sure if it changes from any other point of view, to be honest, because one of the things that it's nice, I would say, of working 4 days a week, in our case at Abtion, is that we've implemented the more strict calendar, or the more strict working time. And this is something that is highly, maybe, I'm not going to say debatable, but yeah, it's what triggers people most usually in Denmark, is when we say you have to work 7.5 hours uninterruptedly, meaning you start working between 7:30 and 9 in the morning, and you do your workday, meaning you cannot catch up at 8 p.m., right? Before going to bed, doing an hour extra. We want people to really work at the same time. And
Yeah.
this is one of the things that we decided to do in order to be as efficient as possible. This was one of the things. If we are, again, about to work 30 hours a week and we want to achieve the same, we need to have a very high level of collaboration. And that means that we need to have the same working time, as much overlap as possible.
Yeah.
So this is nice in terms of the planning. You do have this in mind. When people are at work, people are at work. And there is a lot less of this of, oh, I need to go to the hairdresser, which I don't know how often it's that in Lithuania. In Denmark, I can tell you, coming from Spain as a foreigner, I'm sometimes surprised of the level of things that people decide to do on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. You know?
Okay. Yeah, but I guess it's also if everyone works until 6, like it's difficult then to plan around that as well sometimes. Like if everyone has more or less the same hours, right?
Yeah,
So in Lithuania, like you can go to dress at 9, it's fine.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's one of the things I would say in terms of what changes else as a manager. I would say there's a couple of other things which are related also to culture and motivation and so on, but there is something that changed of how Abtion is perceived from the outside.
Okay.
And that has, and also from the inside, right? Also like looking at us, how Abtioneers,
Yeah.
we call them, look at Abtion itself. And there is something with people that are here, most of the people at least, definitely all the new people, believe in in what we're trying to achieve, right? In the
Yeah.
we do have like working 4 days a week is almost a vision in itself, right?
Yeah.
Because people that are here are motivated by that. So there is something with the things that we do where I might even get internal resistance if they don't believe that it aligns with the values, right? Let's say I'm trying to do something that doesn't align with the values. I may get someone from Action say like, that doesn't sound like something we should do, right?
Okay.
And also for hiring people from the outside, the people that apply
Yeah.
at Action, many of them they are really motivated and they really believe in the 4-day work week. So that was a surprisingly good change in
Okay.
regards to okay, we like everyone takes it seriously. It's also to myself, right? Like okay, this is serious stuff, right?
Okay.
Which is
Yeah,
quite
and
good
then
to me.
yes, and then I guess you also have like then you have like a almost like a high responsibility then, right? To keep that up as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
But I
exactly.
think it's also for me, it's very interesting attribute. Like if you make your culture or anything around your company very different, specific, something unique, you will find people who want to work for that, for you specifically, because of that uniqueness, right?
Totally. Totally. And there is also, it's important, like part of it by description is that it's not for everyone, right? So
Yeah,
I'm going to say that when we switched to 4-day work week and we started changing stuff, there were a lot of people that left actually. And only looking back, you understand that was part of the process, right? In the moment, you are like, oh my God, these people are living and they've been at the company for a few
yeah,
years and it's almost as a statement, right? That they decide to leave. And then you look back and it's like, oh, in order to become who we've became, who we've become, then you do need these people to leave, right? So it's part of the journey.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then also like it's like I said, especially like if you select the stricter version, right? Like what you said. For example, we don't have the strict rule, like having all like working like the continuous hours. It would be challenge for me, to be
Mhm.
honest. Like I would need to adapt and like to kind of consciously go through a process to adapting to that
Yeah.
because we are kind of used to, I think, like overall to this flexible time I work here and there, and then I can maybe have some time for something I need to do.
Yeah, totally. It's one of the things we get the most challenged about, to be honest. And I see both points. I totally see both points. I would say we taking the decision based on because our way of working and the way we believe that we produce the most is specifically by collaboration, right? So we've
Yeah,
decided to take that one as to say this is the what we need, what is an enabler of the 4-day work week. And of course, it can. I'm very aware that it can work the other way around. There is also the whole discussion of synchronous versus asynchronous that I don't
yeah,
think we should discuss because it's a topic by itself.
yeah,
But I'm gonna say I bet my personal belief is that it works as long as you design it with that in mind, right? And
yeah,
this is the important thing is that it shouldn't be an accident. It should be something that you've planned for. And that's one of the things that I believe is really important to the 4-day work week is like, it's going to be, or at least it was for us, an enabler to do whatever you want to do. But you have
Yeah.
to do that something. It's not a thing by itself that you just work 20% less and then you magically work better, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Maybe something to touch upon as well is, like I mentioned, we work 20% less, right? There are companies, and I guess the most like famous example is Google's 20% time. They started, I think, this whole movement, right? You work on whatever you want for 20% of the time.
Yeah.
Now you guys are saying you don't work that 20% of the time. So, but that also kind of restricts the innovation, maybe like time to just tinkering and maybe just researching something. How do you solve that? Do you experience that?
Yeah.
How do you work with this?
It's a really good question, and I hope that afterwards you answer it also yourself because I'm very curious about that one. But I would say that because we work in technology, right? It's very important that we keep exploring all the things that is going on right now. For example, there is a lot going on with AI, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that first come to my mind is also it's also similar to education or things like that. We are maybe in the luxury where if we only look at engineers, and we also have designers and so on, but as I'm the CTO, I'm just going to talk about engineers for a
Yeah.
second. Like if you give them the Friday off, like they really are going to use part of that time to keep evolving themselves. These are people, as you mentioned before, like they want to be effective, they want to do a good job. And we've been interviewed by this many times from universities and so on. And he's like, oh, what do you do on Fridays? Do you work? And it's like, no. And I said, well, describe your day, right? Your last Friday. And then they say that they've watched a YouTube video about something about programming, right? Like, oh, but this isn't that work. And they're like, no. they, they just decide to do that because that's who they are, right? Like they really keep learning, and the difference is that they take it now as personal development and as a hobby and
Yeah.
something that they do because they want to rather than because they have to, which I think is really important. And then the other side is from a company perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, and but by the way, I also want to say that we also have a budget for education, so it's not like we don't educate people. Like there's
Yeah.
also a budget for that. But then the other part is like, let's say me as a CTO, I need to like right now, for example, we are exploring into how do we utilize AI for increasing productivity, right? Which is a
Yeah.
topic that it's in everyone's mind, and like the part of the reality is like no one knows the answer, so you have to build it upon yourself, right? It's
Yeah.
really important to have this time to actually investigate and be up to date and try new stuff.
Yeah.
And I can start by saying like it is a real challenge not to have this 20% of time. So again, it is a constraint we've put in ourselves. Then we need to do a plan that is as productive as possible into how are we going to do this without wasting a ton of time while we work on stuff that is valuable, right? And stuff that we can deliver to our clients. So now we have a plan. We have a group of people that are very motivated by it. To me, that's really important.
Yeah.
It all needs to come from motivation because it's the only way that it can work. And then with this small group of people, then we are doing small experiments while they are working on what they work on their projects they are working.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's try to do this agent that does this one thing, right?
Yeah.
And then they experiment that, and then they come back, and we have these conversations, relatively short, but again, focused on working on something that is valuable, right, on
Yeah.
the final product.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. And I and your mention on the engineers just learning and not considering that work, like I think that's especially in engineering, I think that's one of the main reasons why we should work 4 days, because work never just stops when you're out of office or you're out of maybe like you're not on a company's time, so to speak, right? One is just this field, like you said, is just evolving too fast to not watch and keep up and read blog posts and on whatnot. And then I guess as well, I think if you are in this field and you are enjoying, like you probably enjoy learning as well, new things. So
Yeah.
that's part of it. Another part of it is also like I have never experienced like a when I was working like 5 days as well, right? I didn't have an experience where I leave the office and I stop thinking about the challenges I had, right?
I wish, right? Like,
Yeah, but they are always like in your back of your head, like if you're doing something, if you're preparing dinner or anything like that, right?
yeah,
And and I think there is also plenty of research saying that all the insights usually come when you are away from the challenge, right? You
yeah,
invest the time, but then you are away from it. So all this just points that all that time, like the extra day you get, it's not like you are not working. It's just you are not bound to like a computer or something, but
yeah.
it's
Completely,
there.
completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to share, Vidas, how do you do it for the? Especially, I'm very interested in the innovation part. Also, since you have the 4-day work week. Do you
Yes, and I
talk
think
about
it's a
that?
challenge.
Yeah.
It's I think we try to so like on the individual part, I also kind of we have like also if someone needs to like a book budget for books or maybe courses or anything like that, so learning budget. But then we also kind of more rely on people just to on people's curiosity and then just figuring stuff out. We also try to we are a small team. We're 6 engineers, so if we see something that is helpful, we try to integrate into what we currently do. So
Mhm.
if we, for example, we have a challenge that we are solving where AI, for example, would be an option.
Okay.
That's one thing. Like, okay, maybe we can try something, right? And it's like small in scope, see what happens, and then if it helps, it helps. We last year we did a hackathon for a couple of days.
Yeah.
I think I used to do that in my previous company as well. I think those work really well if you organize it, and then there are a bunch of ideas floating around. You can develop something quickly. I think on our end, like it's a bit boring for non-engineers to participate in that activity. And that's the challenge. And how do you make it exciting for the whole company, not just engineers working on some demos?
Makes sense.
Yeah, but then especially on the productivity side, right? And then how do you integrate? So that's we are just testing out as well. We are testing out different products. We we our stack is Kotlin mainly on the backend side base. So we have like JetBrains IDEs, right? And then the integration with those is tricky. We don't want to just change our development environment completely. So for example, we are using Windsurf and just using it, we don't measure really it, how like the productivity of it, but we are learning, okay, where does it help? And then where it doesn't. So we already had this few learnings that something like simple, crude or endpoints or something like that, they're quite good. If we are diving deep into some business logic, if we are diving deep into OS registers, like Denmark specific, right? Then it's useless, but we wouldn't expect it any other way as well, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and this is one of the things where we are learning right now, right? What is the best way to use it? There is definitely a ton of potential, but again, there is also a lot of discovery, right? And that is the tricky part. Everyone expected just to that you can become lazy and that the thing work for you, and that's not the thing in this case with AI, right?
Yeah,
It is something that will like, yeah, it's on top of my priorities, right? Because at the same time we need to like it's not only that we need to be ultra productive now with high collaboration is that if next year or in 5 years or whatever the way of working changes so much, um then like we need to still be like, we need it to be sustainable, right? We always say
Yeah.
one of the reasons that we do for the work week is that we look at how sustainable it is from also a personal point of view, right? Like
Yeah.
it's more sustainable to work 4 days a week if you are looking at the long run, right?
Yeah.
If you imagine yourself like into, okay, I want to work like 10, 20, 30 years on this, then you're not gonna do like this 6 days a week, right? Like
Yeah.
you want it to be something where you're also enjoying the way there, right?
Yes.
So it also needs to be sustainable for the company. And in that sense, like that's why I think the question of the investment into exploring how we are working and keep evolving, it's so relevant because again, it's not only that I want to be working adaption in however amount of years, it's also that the company needs to exist,
Yeah.
right? It needs to be
Yeah.
sustainable for the company. If it's not sustainable for the company, then it's not going to work, right? Then there
Yeah.
is no 4 day work week, and there is 0 day work week. So
Yeah, exactly. It's also, I think, 40, like, you're such a great example, I think, Abtion, like working for 6 years, right, on 4 days a week, and then and thriving, like not just like, right, surviving. So, especially in this case where everyone said, oh, AI will just replace everyone, every code will be written by AI. And then everyone now kind of realizing, oh, so writing code isn't a bottleneck.
mm,
Right? Like faster writing doesn't really produce better software, more software, or solve challenges a lot faster, right? And I think Aption and us having less time to sort of write code, but adopting different methods to actually solve the right things and do it in an incremental right way, kind of makes a point that there are other aspects that are more important than just writing code or more time to write code, right?
that is a really good point. Yeah, that is a really good point.
Mm. But then, and you mentioned already, like looking at the longer term, right? Like looking on for the work week, like in a year, maybe several years. Did you measure maybe these, or maybe you just noticed some effects of like having worked 4 days a week for 6 years? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I would say I can answer it in many ways. So, personally, I would say my quality of life has improved dramatically from a
yeah,
personal point of view. Um, yeah, to a point where, yeah, it's yeah. I mean, like people ask me, like, is it nice to have Fridays off? And it's like, it's as nice as it sounds, honestly.
yes, yes, it is.
um, but like that's on one side, right? And when I look at myself and it's like, well, would you keep doing this like until when, right? Uh, like I'm happy, like I have no reason to search for greener pastures. And I believe many people think that as well. At least adoption, we have, like, if we look at what have been the changes, like the tenure has increased a lot. So of course there are people still that leave, and for all sorts of different reasons. It's not like everyone is happy. It's not like this is,
Yeah,
like a world where everyone is just eating candy.
yeah,
But um, but the reality is that there are more people that want to stay for longer if I
yeah,
compare it to how we were before, right?
yeah,
I think it's around half of the people that have been here for longer than 5 years, and the other ones have been because we have been also growing, right? So you also have
yeah,
many people with 1 to 2 years. But we're pretty satisfied with that. If you look at at how much people were switching before, there are many people that have stayed for long. And if we look also at the changes of what is it that has changed, there is also what I was talking before a little bit about, which is like that motivation, right? Like the
yeah,
people actually wanting to be there, which is something that you could think it's a given in technology, but it not always is, right? So
right.
I especially appreciate like working with people that are motivated by it, and that's also something that I've seen it has changed. The
Okay.
reasons why people are a part of Action, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, what I think what I can add is that, so I'm working come under like, I don't know, more than a year and 3 months something. There wasn't a Monday that I dreaded the day.
Hmm.
Like I'm I'm always rested, and
Yeah.
that has never happened before. There was usually like ups and downs, of course, but then now it's just you go to work and you are excited to go to work. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of that motivation, like in the drive, is just like people feeling good, right? They're rested, and therefore like all the rest follows.
Yeah. I'm gonna say something that to me personally actually has been a bit of a discovery in the past couple of years, and is that, like, of course, resting is super important, and it's a great part of not becoming stressed. Um, it also, I've discovered that it needs also some planning or some attention to it. So the same way that by just working 4 days a week doesn't automatically give you a boost
Yeah,
in performance, just having Fridays off, it does, at least in my case, and also with some people that I've talked about, doesn't necessarily translate into rest. And I have an example. So it was actually last year, I believe it was in summer. We close in half of July, like the second half of July, we are away. And I remember I had a very chill vacation, meaning that I didn't do so much. And I'm a very
yeah,
active person. I relax when I do stuff. Um, and in this case, the plan was to go to a summer house and
okay,
cook and do not so much, right?
yeah,
And in that moment, when I went on vacation, I was involved into a project that wasn't doing great because we simply needed more time for what we
yeah,
wanted to achieve. So that's a classic, right? Like all
yeah,
projects have constraints. But I remember going specifically on vacation on a point where there were so many unknowns, right? Like, will
okay,
we make it? There is a
yeah,
chance, but. And I remember, laying down in the sun, thinking about all of these problems. And like what you said before, right? Like, well, we don't stop thinking like
yeah,
when clock hits 5 o'clock, right? So there I was trying to solve all these problems in my head, but the problem is like I couldn't act on it. Also because I
yeah,
forced myself, like as a part of, well, no, your value is that you rest when you rest, right?
yeah,
So you need to prove it to the world. So there I was, like with all of these thoughts in my head, without being able to do something, and it was restless. Like I could not stop thinking about it, right? So there is also something about like when you rest, you need to make sure that you are resting at this like quality rest that you can really disconnect.
yeah,
Because if you are thinking of the problems, and I have also had this conversation with other engineers that feel the same, right? Like
yeah,
they need to, especially with that you mentioned before, after 5 o'clock, they keep
yeah,
thinking about the problems.
yeah.
So it's important also to handle that, to take that into account.
Yes, yeah, that for sure. I'm just, hmm, I don't know if I would like if I have a really good challenge. Like, I want to solve it. But it's also great. Like I totally get it. Like I think for me, actually, it's changed a lot since I have a kid.
Mhm.
And when I go home, that like you can't, right? Like you cannot really do anything else. Like there is Legos, there is other stuff, and then that's it. So this was probably one of the best ways to just not be able to engage in any work kind of activity at
Yeah,
all.
they force you to disconnect, huh?
Yeah, 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 for sure. So yeah. But then just maybe wrapping up on the on the impact and changes, right, that you have seen, like have you, and you said I think at the beginning of the conversation that you saw that you could do the same thing in 4 days, right? So did you actually tried measuring it or
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. It's in such a good question also in engineering, right? Because we have all of these, I mean, talks about productivity. And when you ask, like, what are you measuring, right? Like, there is no universal measuring that you say, like, well, I do more story points. It's like, well, I do a million story points a day if you want, right? So it's a great question, and the way I like to answer it is like because we are also a digital agency. I think there is the difference. The main difference with a product company is that we are much more open in regards to the time. We really count the time. So by design, all the companies that sell hours, they are
Yeah.
gonna have very like they're gonna really measure that a lot. How much are we spending here? How much are we spending here? Which I don't see that culture in product companies.
Yeah.
Um, and in that sense, like if you look at what you need a company to work, right? And it's the
Yeah.
classic trio, is like you want the client to be happy, you want the employees to be happy, and you want to make money, right? Like those are the three parts, putting it like very blunt, right? If we look at are the employees happy, then we can see, and that's easy to measure, we have a higher employee promoter score than we had
Yeah.
before. We had a longer tenure, and like people in general are happier, right? Being at Abtion. So that one is like the easiest to cross.
Yeah.
Then we have the two other ones that are the most challenging. If we look at the economic side, at least
Yeah.
that one is easy to measure. And
Yeah.
we have seen an increase in both revenue and profit after switching to 4-day work week,
Wow. Okay.
which is a statement taking into account that we have 20% less billable time. I'm going to say, to be fully honest, part of that is because there was a big room for improvement
Okay.
when we changed to
Yeah.
4-day work week. But the reality is that we did those necessary steps to actually make it a healthy company.
Yeah.
People often ask, could you have made those changes without the 4-day work week? Well, yes, maybe, but this is
Yeah.
our story. This is how it happened, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I guess also making changes, like making, and these are kind of big changes without giving anything back, right? To the like there is a lot of stress and everything and going through that. So I think it's also a much uh more difficult ask from the all the employees as well.
Totally. It's part of the story of this is why we are changing. It's a
Yeah.
management tool, you could say. It's something that managers suddenly have that a manager wouldn't have in a normal scenario. And just to answer the question, the third one is like, are clients satisfied, right? And of course, I'm not going to say like all our clients are satisfied, but most of them are, and that's why, of course, we can stay in business. And I'm going to say because our way of working means that we are working very close to our clients. We receive constantly the feedback that we are not slower. In fact, very often we are a lot faster than what our clients expect, and therefore sometimes that adds a pressure to them where they need to react. So the expectations, like we do at least a matching of expectations, if not a surpassing. This is not something that is maybe as easy to measure,
Yeah.
but it is something that gives a feeling like, okay, if we don't cannot talk about story points, we can at
Yeah.
least talk about expectations, right?
Right.
And we do also have like this where we work with some clients where we have the collaboration where we work with the development team with the goal of not only delivering software, but also making their whole technology team more effective while they are working with us, right? So it is a collaboration on two sides, we can say.
Nice. Um, yeah, it's very interesting to hear. I wonder also, so you work with clients, and I guess your clients as well work maybe with other agencies or have at least have worked in the past. Like, what do they say about your approach in and working like in this tight collaboration with them? Is it something new or different for them or
Yeah, definitely. It depends on the client, right? Because of course you see all sorts of things. Usually, we receive very good feedback because the people get so involved in the project and they get so close to it that you are not seen so much as the other, right? Which is kind of
yeah,
the dream of an agency. You don't want to be like that company, that other that you can just blame, right? Like it's so easy to say, oh no, well, that's just because Abtion didn't do a good job or whatever. And we really like, I believe every collaborator is trying to fight against that, right? You really want to form a team. And to
Yeah.
us, it's really important, like in the mentality of the collaboration, it's not like the client and us, it's the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with everything that we do, like we don't try to also think about what is it that we can solve on our side so then it's on their side so that we
Yeah.
look good and they look bad. It's about, can we do even something on our side to help them? Well, if there is a pressure here that they have, can we take it away from them, right?
Yeah.
And if you have that mentality, right, if we want to go together to the final line, then you get their real collaboration, and that's why I think the most of the feedback that we receive, it's pretty good. I'm gonna say that for some people it's also too much. Like we've also received the feedback of, I don't have time for this, right? And we see
Okay. Yeah.
this especially when it happens in many companies that the people that can make decisions, this is usually not the same people that have time. Rather, they are very
Yeah.
very often different people. So we get the person that has time, but then that person cannot take decisions, and
Yeah.
then it is problematic.
And that's a very good point. I guess you need some alignment on culture, right? Like uh you need people who are involved, empowered to make decisions, and that probably will be companies where a lot of or most employees can make decisions, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's why also we need to find like the sweet spot. If the company is too slow because it's too large, then it's usually not the best. Like they don't get as much from us as if they actually organize in a way where they can also move at certain pace, right? So what we've seen when we've worked with larger companies, and which is a very usual model, is that they actually have a department, or they sometimes even make another company that
Yeah.
is like their lab or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's something that they say, well, you can break all the rules, just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And then they move a little bit faster.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, like that medium large, like that medium company, like we usually have very, very good collaboration with.
Nice. I'm also really, I think hearing about like breaking that us and them, like that other barrier is such an important part of any company, product companies as well. I think it's such a cliche, saying, oh, sales sells things we don't have now. We need to do something like that we don't have time to or whatever, right?
Um,
It's just it's just such a it's just killing all the productivity, so to speak. Not even effectiveness, I would actually call it.
yeah,
That if you start thinking about like that we are here to solve a challenge, like to accomplish the same goal, like everything just moves a lot faster.
totally. I think it's so important to motivation for everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're being on the same boat, right? And I think there is so many opportunities to just say the others, right? Like, as you just call it, sales. It can be like the other company. It can be
yeah,
the other agency. I'm gonna say, like, from myself, my own point of view, like it is a challenge. Like I also have to overcome myself, right?
yeah,
To not just blame the other agency,
yeah.
because that's the easy thing to do. That's a bit.
And human as well, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah. It feels so natural, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Maybe it's also part of the reason why like what you described previously, right? When some people just want to work, right, at Abtion, and then some left because it didn't match their values or life circumstances. But I think that is also like this culture part, right, is also a big thing because some people are used to working in certain types of companies and cultures, and then I think this very, very collaborative with high ownership, it's like you need to get used to it sometimes even, I think.
Totally, 100%, and that's one of my biggest challenges actually in development or as a CTO is like the hiring part. So luckily I do receive lots of applicants. That's something that changed from before. Um, but we're not looking for the typical employee. So we need them to be very technical because that's like the nature of what we do. It's complex, it's technical, right? But at the same time, we need someone who enjoys collaboration and thrives with that, right? And we actually sell the process that you're going to love. That's what we sell to our clients.
Yeah.
And um like they can only love it if the person on the other side is also loving it, right? So it needs to be someone who really enjoys like that. It's not afraid of actually making a phone call to a client to ask a question or jumping into
Yeah.
a video call. And it's not all developers that can do that. You can, like, I also understand that there are many people that just prefer to be separated from that contact, shielded from that contact. And our philosophy is quite the opposite. It's like you
Yeah.
are going to be thinking about the final results. You're going to be all the time thinking about that, and you're going to take so many steps that are not defined into the typical developer role, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be like solving that bigger problem, not the technicality that you're working with. You're also
Yeah.
going to be solving the technicality
Yeah.
by thinking about the other one, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, and I totally agree. I think it's, although I think it's changing, and I think this typical engineer, so to speak, that like, I don't know, maybe 10 or something years ago, I think that kind of description changes with time. But I think, yeah, it's, I think everyone who's hiring, like, you need to be very kind of, and you need to probably also devise hiring process to actually um, find those people, right? Do you have any insights there? What worked for you, like to identifying people who thrive at Abtion?
mm. It's a really good question, to be honest. Also, one to ask to myself because that's the key to success, right? Hiring the good
Yeah,
people. I'm gonna say I've personally, I'm a little bit in a hiring crisis in the sense that since AI has popped up, it's so
yeah,
much difficult to do the first rounds of
yeah,
hiring. Like I need to, it's harder to go to that, okay, this person may be a fit. So right now I changed my approach. Of course, I'm also using AI for the very first screening and
yeah,
then going as fast as possible to the first video call to also see how that interaction is.
yeah,
And I drive a lot from that one. We do our whole hiring process hasn't changed so much from that point on. Like it has only maybe changed the first two steps,
yeah,
trying to make it more effective because we're also a small company. And this is also a problem. Like if we are 35 people and we only need to hire like one person and then you had like get like hundreds of applicants and then it's like, I just need one person, right? So it's a luxury problem, but still a problem. And also because we work 4 days a week, right? So we need to be effective.
yeah,
Um, but the whole process is really trying to imitate a lot how we work. So we do a lot of pair programming
yeah,
during the interview, right? Because that's what you're gonna be doing, and it's really a lot about like we actually hire in team. There is like several people that are gonna be working with the candidate, and then we all meet and we say like, we share our
yeah,
experiences, and then we say one of the questions is did you enjoy, would you work the whole day with this person? And that's a really important question for us because you like as an employee you need to enjoy working with your colleagues, and also like will the clients enjoy working with them, right? Like will it be like an enjoyable experience? And that's a big part of the determining factor.
yeah. Nice. And I think, yeah, if you do a lot of peer programming and if that's part of the hiring process, you can get a lot out of that, right? Like the interaction, even, I don't know, just how you feel working with the person. Like it says a lot.
Totally,
Um,
totally.
I
There
think
was yeah,
I
yeah, no
think for
problem.
what worked for my was like big aha moment when we started using Amazon principles, like leadership principles in a hiring process. And then those specific questions like, do you remember a time when you did something that was not part of your job description, but you
Right.
see that it needs to do it? And I think what that highlights are people who are good at communication and that can like tell a story for you in a sense, right? And I think that's part of the skill set that you kind of need someone who can communicate clearly and present case, etc. And I think that people who we hired through that process, like we had a much higher success rate than just doing the tech exercise and then maybe review. Even the review, actually, if you lead it in a specific way, can tell a lot, like
Totally.
how someone goes through the code and then explanations, etc.
Totally.
Right. So maybe to wrap up, I think I have like one very like big question, I guess, but maybe you have distilled knowledge with one answer. Like, if someone wants to, I guess, try. I don't know if anyone is brave enough just to jump in and do, like, 4 days work week for the whole company. If someone wants to try, like for an engineering department, let's say, all right, what are the key things to consider and get right?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I would say it really starts a lot with the motivation, right? Like what is it that you're trying to achieve with moving to 4-day work week? Um, and it's important to say that it is a tool, a very powerful tool, but it's an enabler, as I said before. So it needs to come with this other set of things that you are gonna do. So I would actually suggest, like in our case, like it was a change that happened across 4 6 months. Um, the switching to the 4-day work week, and we were activating things during that time. There was a
Yeah,
transition period, and I think like really a key is to have that in mind. Like you're gonna be changing quite a few things, so you need to be prepared for that, or you need to have that plan out.
yeah,
How you're gonna achieve the same in 4 days that you do in 5. And the answer is, like, from our case, like it's totally possible. It's something that we've achieved, but we didn't achieve it just by the 4-day work week. So I think like the very important is to have those values. Like you wanna I'm not gonna speak for the people that decide to move for the work week, but
yeah,
for most people will be like, we actually wanna work with that philosophy of just putting more hours doesn't result necessarily in the final product. It's something desirable that we work less hours and still produce the
yeah,
same, right? Having that philosophy. So usually what resonates with people, right? If we can just do that, then why don't we do it, right?
yeah,
So have that in mind as a plan, and don't fall into the old habits. I would say like that's such an important one, right? So for us,
yeah,
something very important that we repeat is like we work 30 hours a week. First of all, you need to work those 30 hours. Like there could also be, like, if you look at other companies, and one of the reasons why we can be as effective in 4-day work week is because Fridays in some companies, it's half a joke, in the sense that people leave so early on Fridays. So you are only fighting against 4 days and a half, right?
yeah,
But you jump to for the work week, some people want to do it 3 days and a half, right? Some people want to go half of Thursdays. Well, it's
yeah,
really like almost a vacation, right? So I'm gonna go home. And it's really important also when we talk about like people that join, that they understand what they're getting
yeah,
into. And I also found out that there is you also attract people that wanna that wanna work less, but a little bit not thinking so much about the productivity, about the
yeah,
we wanna work like as effectively in 30 hours. Like some people, and it's completely understandable, right? But
yeah,
they just see an opportunity to work less, and but keeping the idea of what they were doing, right? With the
yeah,
5 work week. So it's also part of our process to say, well, these are the rules. This is how we are organizing, and it's very
yeah,
important that we all make it a success together. It won't work if we leave Thursday half day, right? Like
yeah,
you still need to put those 30 hours, and you need to respect productivity and do everything that you can to stay productive.
yeah. I have a final question though, as you're describing it. And you described it a bit that you have a great culture where people won't let you do something that contradicts the values that you have, right? Which is, I think it's amazing. I think that's like that it's not entirely like on you, for example, right? To like enforce the values of the 4-day work week. But and so how is it with, for example, new people, right? Like I said, like it can be a process for them adapting to it. Like, does everyone helps? Are you looking out? Like, what how does it
Yeah.
work?
Yeah. Well, so yeah, well, I'm not a scientist, so I'm cautious with naming experiments. But there
Yeah,
is one that I really like where they've done it with humans and with monkeys and with other things. But there is one where you go into a room, and then like the first person that arrives, everyone stands up when there is like a sound,
yeah,
and then little by little they keep switching the people until what happens is like when you see that everyone stands up, then you just stand up,
yeah,
right? The new person stands up, so they start like switching the people. So like at the end, all the people that are in the room, they are new people. They were not
yeah,
part of the actors, let's say, that
yes,
were standing up when the sound starts, right?
yeah,
um and this goes into explain is like we actually copy people naturally, like
yeah,
that will be the way that we interact as humans. And really, because we do so much per programming and this type of work where we collaborate together, I'm actually really much a fan of letting that happen naturally.
yeah,
So I actually, at the beginning of when I hire someone, yes, I do have that walk where I talk and I explain the values and so on.
yeah,
But I'm a really believer actually that the team is gonna do the real work by working together, and they're
yeah,
really going to learn by copying each other. And this is one of the great values of actually pair programming, is that you learn also to copy the other
yeah.
people. You are copying the person that is already successful, so that's going to help you a lot to adapt to the culture.
Nice. I think, yeah, setting, leading by example, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I want to say actually, just to finish that, but is it me pushing? Sometimes I have to be the one where if I see that things are not going in the way that I believe it should go. Sometimes I'm the other one. Sometimes I'm the one that wants to break the rules. And then it's someone that says like, no, don't do it. You can't. Okay, you're right, right? So it goes both ways.
Yeah. And I think that's also a mark of, I think, great team and culture. If someone like you are not the only one, like as a CTO who needs to enforce, so to speak, right? That
Yeah,
team can hold you accountable as well, and keep from sometimes such a sweet time of breaking some of those rules, right?
yeah, yeah, totally.
Nice. Thank you, Hari, for your time. It was really amazing to hear your story. Hopefully, more companies will try 4-day work week. And yeah, yeah, I'm happy to share this and see all the feedback like that.
Thanks a lot, Vilas, and I hope that inspires we've both inspired some people
Yeah,
to try it out, because yeah, I think it is difficult. It requires a lot of work. It's not a given,
yeah,
but in the end, you look at your Friday self, right?
yeah, yeah. It's worth it. Totally.
I think so.
Okay. Thank you, Hari. Uh, bye.
Yeah, take care.